The number one thing you can do is be consistent.
Ho, ho, hello. Welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast, presented by Hippo Direct. Hear from a new entrepreneur or innovator every single week who's unleashing creativity to grow their business. I'm your host, Max Brandstetter, digital marketing dude at Hippo Direct. Shoot me an email at max@hippodirect.com if you are interested in starting a podcast of your own. This is episode 23, and today's guest is Brian Fanzo, known as iSocialFanz in the social media world. He has a crazy story spanning from the Department of Defense to keynote speaking around the world. Keep an ear out for his incredible journey, how he embraces so much new technology, and what you can do to decide what's the right direction to go in with these new innovations, what you can do to stand out in this increasingly content-heavy world, and even some really cool body language tips out there, whether you're a poker player or not. You're sure to become a fan of iSocialFanz after hearing this episode, so buckle up and enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with Brian Fanzo, aka iSocialFanz, on the social media sphere there, and founder of iSocialFanz company. That's with the Z. Brian, how you doing today?
Good, man. Excited to be here. Always fun. Love being on a podcast. I host a couple myself, but I think it's always more fun to be on this side of the microphone. So excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you, and I have the misery of being on the other side of the microphone, so wish me luck today. But you probably didn't know this about me. I kind of wanted to start us off on the wrong foot intentionally. So I know you're a diehard Steelers fan. I'm actually a diehard Browns fan. So I just want to say congrats on your run of success, but watch out because the Browns are coming in hot, baby.
Oh, just the fact that a Browns fan's willing to admit that they're a Browns fan shows the times have changed, and you'll get a kick out of this. My dad raised me with two things growing up in Pittsburgh. He always said nothing good came out of Ohio, and Philadelphia was really in New York. Those are the two things. And but I can tell you, you tied us this year, so that one was a big feat. And after watching Hard Knocks, it was weird for me, but I found myself kind of rooting for the Browns in a weird way, which is really hard for a Steeler fan. So
wow,
I think it'll be interesting. I think the rivalry needs something, and I think Baker Mayfield adds that. So I'm excited to play you guys again next year. But congrats to 5 wins. That's 5 times more than the last 2 years. So I think it's a good thing.
Well, thank you. We actually have 6, so how about that?
6? Wow, look at that. I lost count of the Browns' wins. Who would have thought?
I think what happened there was you didn't think it was conceivably possible for the Browns to get to 6 wins this year, so that's what
that's true. In college, you'd be bowl eligible.
Exactly. Well, we're just trying to beat some college teams out there, but I'll excuse your foul words about Ohio, and we'll leave it to the name of the rivalry. But it is fun, and the Browns have a lot of love this year for Hard Knocks. We actually had Cajuice from Hard Knocks on the podcast previously, so that was a lot of fun. But aside from NFL trash talk, which I'm sure we could do for hours and hours, for anybody that's not as familiar with you yet, can you give a little background of sort of where you came from, obviously Pittsburgh, how you got started with your career, and what's the biggest thing you're up to today?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds good to me. So, I'm a computer science major. I actually went to school, to a small school in Virginia called Radford. It's out by Virginia Tech. Computer science major, played college hockey, of course, diehard Pittsburgh sports fan. Worked in cybersecurity for the Department of Defense for 9 years out of the Pentagon. And I realized I thought I loved technology, but I realized I loved helping people embrace change, not just technology. So I worked 9 years in the government and then decided to leave. Worked at a startup for about 2.5 years as a technology evangelist, really the face of their company, doing all kinds of things around the brand, everything from marketing to recruiting to training. And for the last 5 years, actually my 5-year anniversary as an entrepreneur was about 10 days ago.
Wow.
I've been really focused on I'm a full-time keynote speaker, and I help brands embrace change around digital marketing. I help them relate with the younger generation. And ultimately, what I like to say is I translate the geek speak. So I love technology. I love change. I'm big into like artificial intelligence, augmented reality. I still have kind of a love for that. But I'm a big believer in kind of simplifying that and saying, what does it mean for our businesses today? Where our business is going tomorrow. So I'm very lucky. I've actually traveled to 74 countries. I speak about 40 to, well, hopefully this year I spoke 48 times. Next year my goal is 60 times around the world. But I absolutely love it. I also host 2 podcasts myself. One that's a super geeky technology podcast called Smack Talk, and then one that is more around fun digital marketing, which is called FOMO-Fanz, where I cure your fear of missing out around digital marketing. So that's kind of who I am in a nutshell. I'm also a proud dad of 3 little girls, and I live here in Northern Virginia.
There you go. Brian Fanzo, iSocialFanz in a nutshell there. Sounds like you're up to a couple things on the daily basis, but I love your story. It's really, really cool. All the different things that you're doing and just how active and how inspiring you are in this social media, digital/technology era. I want to dive into a couple different parts of your backstory that are very unique and very, very cool. So let's start with that. Working at the Pentagon in the Department of Defense, that cybersecurity portion of your life. So what exactly were you doing and how did you get into that role in the first place?
Well, getting into the role is a fun one. It happened at a grocery store, if you can believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, I left college. I couldn't get a job in technology at all. I applied to a bunch of jobs. So I decided to work for UPS, wearing the brown shorts. And I actually went union. And I was delivering packages for about a year and a month or year and 2 months. And it happened to be a Saturday afternoon. I ran to the grocery store to get some beer. And I was in line wearing my fraternity letters. Shout out to Kappa Delta Rho. And the gentleman in front of me turned around and was like, "Oh, you're a KDR. Where are you from? Blah, 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 blah." Well, it turns out his roommate was also a graduate of KDR at the same university I went to. And he asked me 2 kind of poignant questions. He was like, "Oh, you're in computer science." He's like, "How much experience do you have in cybersecurity?" And I said, "None. I didn't have a single class in it. I have no idea what it is." And he goes, "Do you know what a vulnerability is or what patching a system is?" I was like, "Nope, I sure don't." I was like, "I'm pretty transparent, so I have no idea what that is." And he's like, "So the good news is I don't have to unteach you anything. The bad news is I would have to teach you everything." He's like, "Could you get a security clearance?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I could get a security clearance." And so long story short, I started at a help desk. I had to take about a 50% pay cut from what I was making from UPS. UPS was a great job for as far as financially, and it kept me in great shape running in and out with all the packages and such.
Yeah, it's a workout.
It is a workout. And then I started working 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day on a help desk in cybersecurity. So I was learning what cybersecurity was. I was taking courses. And I was supporting the Department of Defense. I worked for a contractor called BAE Systems. This was, early on. And then about 6 months or maybe 9 months into the help desk job, everything changed for me. And my boss came in, and on a Friday afternoon, I remember it very easily. And he said, "Who here can travel to Korea on Monday?" There was like a group of 9 of us probably in the room. I was the first one to get my hand up. I'd never been to Korea. I'd actually never been out of the country. And I pretty much was like, I'll jump at any opportunity. And what had happened was the person that ran our training team decided to quit with no notice. And they needed someone to fly to Korea and train our active duty military on the cybersecurity tools in person. And so I ended up saying yes. That Saturday, I went to downtown Washington, D.C. and got a same-day passport. I actually hadn't had a passport at that point. And I got on a flight early Sunday morning direct to Seoul, Korea. And I ended up teaching a 4-day course. It was probably one of the craziest things I've ever done because I would teach day 1 and then go back to my hotel and watch YouTube videos to learn what I was teaching for day 2, which makes for a very interesting dilemma. I can tell you that. It was extremely hard to, I felt, I was training the active duty military, and the tools that we were teaching them on weren't, I wouldn't say super advanced, but it was definitely new. But the cool part about it was I taught the 4-day course. I got on an airplane. I was flying back from Korea. I landed in Atlanta. And on my BlackBerry at the time, remember this is end of 2004.
I remember those things.
Oh, yes. On my BlackBerry, I looked down to an email. My boss forwarded me an email from the head over there at the Korea branch, the Army location that we were at. And the email pretty much said, in short, that was the greatest training class we've ever received. Brian changed a lot of our thoughts on you as a government contractor. and we would like to have Brian come back again. His reviews were 4.9 out of 5. And my boss pretty much just said, come in on Monday and be prepared for a promotion 3 levels above where you're at now. You're going to take this role. And make that this actually long story even shorter or semi-shorter is I ended up growing that role into 32 direct reports on my team. We ended up running 4 training courses a week, every single week around the world. I did 3 trips to Iraq, 2 to Afghanistan, ended up traveling at that point to about 58 countries over the next 9 years, had an amazing team. And so that was my cyber world. So it went from a grocery store to I happened to raise my hand first to kind of going to YouTube University, which is what I like to say. I graduated. My cybersecurity knowledge is all from YouTube. And then I grew this amazing team, and it was one hell of a wild ride. I ended up asking my boss at one point, I said, hey, all of my employees are remote. Can I move from Northern Virginia to somewhere else? And so I ended up moving to Arizona, working from home in Arizona. That's where my 3 daughters were born out there in Arizona. And I ran the team remotely, and it was amazing. It was I had this great team and a great role. If I loved cybersecurity and the government a whole bunch, I'd probably still be there. But I quickly I realized that the government was really good at spinning their wheels and going nowhere. After 9 years, I decided to move on, but it was one hell of a 9 years, that's for sure.
Absolutely. That sounds like it. And shout out UPS. I have to say, Brian, if you wore brown every single day, you must be a Browns fan.
Oh, I was actually thinking that. As I said that, I was like, damn, not many times where I say I wore brown every day for a year and a half. Not most people aren't like, oh, me too. But I guess, I was very Browns fan-like.
Right. There you go. But that's an incredible story, and really going out to Korea and having sort of that foreign experience, foreign from a knowledge standpoint, as far as you're coaching and presenting to people on things that you're learning right then and there, that had to be super helpful for you.
It taught me everything. I tell you what, in today's world right now, change happens so freaking fast that it's not about learning everything. It's about coming up with a process that allows you to learn on the fly. And those years, even my first couple years in that role, cybersecurity was so new to me, and I was in charge of working with the U.S. military. And then, that role eventually became, I started presenting at the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the Pentagon. And my job was to get the Army to share policies with the Navy. I mean, that was literally my job. I believe I had the hardest collaboration job in history. I would go in, or even the Air. I remember sitting down with the Air Force and being like, well, we need to share these policies with the Army. And they're like, oh, we do we? And I'm like, well, yeah, we're all fighting the same battle, aren't we? And they're like, I'm not sure we're willing to. And so part of my job was not only figuring out how to learn on the fly, but even the people on my team, almost every person that worked for me was older than I was, mainly because there wasn't a lot of young people in cybersecurity. So that job taught me to learn on the fly. It taught me the idea of coming up with a process to embrace change, not to be scared of change. It taught me how to manage people that were older than I was, to respect my elders, but also command respect myself as a younger manager. It was a heck of a time, and it was a wild ride, that's for sure.
Absolutely wild. Very fitting for the Wild Business Growth Podcast.
There you go.
One other thing about your backstory that stood out to me, and I really want to touch on, is I know you're an avid poker player and poker fan, and you've mentioned in the past how that has been helpful for your career in business. Can you speak a little bit about your delvings into the poker world and how that's helped you professionally?
Sure. Yeah, of course. It's actually amazing how much, weirdly enough, I've studied poker more than I've studied business or marketing or technology. I've read more books on poker than anything else. In 2011, 2012, I started playing poker kind of semi-professionally, played 5 years of the World Series of Poker there in Vegas, did some traveling. I was sponsored for a little while. And really what I figured out about poker and relates to business was there's definitely different ways you can win in life. There's definitely different ways you can win in business. And you have to kind of figure out what works for you. And poker is one of those fun games for me, is that you're not playing against the house. You're playing against everybody at the table, and everybody can approach things differently. I'm not a numbers guy. I am not great at math. I am not a guy that is someone that can really, understand percentages. Eventually I understood, poker percentages, but what I am is I'm a people person, and I can get to know people. I can learn to read people. I can understand what makes people tick, what makes people excited. And so I used a lot of my people skills at the poker table. I ended up going to a boot camp to learn how to read nonverbal cues from people. So reading body language, reading different tells. And my game was, my poker game was a lot less about the cards and a lot more about understanding the people that I was playing. And, when I go on stage, I even build my keynote speeches out this way, is that my presentations aren't scripted. They have certain slides, certain a presentation style, but the way I do it is I actually read the audience, and depending on how the audience is taking one concept, I have a 2-minute story or I have a 5-minute story. And so if I see the people in the front row, if I see them folding their hands or pushing their feet out in front of them, or if I see them making like drastic movements, I realize that they're no longer interested in this topic, and I'll change to my 2-minute story, right? If I see them tuck their feet underneath their table or underneath their chair, if I see them slide up in their seat a little bit, if I see them, going from, clutching their hands to putting their hands on their legs, little things like that, I'll notice that they're interested and they want more, and I'll actually change my story and I'll give a 5-minute story. And so I use a lot of that. I also, I'm a big believer in kind of, you have to manage expectations and see how things are. And I know we talk a little bit about sports here, but, I live in Northern Virginia and I still play poker. And sometimes if I know I want to make the table a little upset, I'll wear a Pittsburgh Penguins jersey here in Washington, D.C. I know immediately all the Washington Capitals fans are going to have something out for me. And so what that ends up doing is it's put somebody off their game, right? Because now they're making decisions based on my jersey, less on my cards. They're like, wow, I need to go after that guy. I don't like that guy. And I use that to my favor. And I do the same thing in business and in life, right? Like, sometimes, I'm the guy, for those that don't know me, like, I wear a backwards hat on stage. I have bright colored Chuck Taylors. I oftentimes am the token millennial that they throw up on stage. And so sometimes people will come in there and they're like, oh God, another millennial. He has a hat on. Like, who is this guy?
So sick of these millennials.
Exactly. And then when they leave, they fall in love with me and they love my message. And what I tell people is, the reason I'm able to get people to fall in love with me on stage is I allow them to follow a long journey. If you think about it, they come in kind of not happy, or they kind of like not expecting much. And so they have a very low bar. And then when they leave, the bar is so high, they traveled a long gamut to get there. And so, little things like that I learned from the poker table. I also learned things like, knowing when to pick your battle, when not to pick your battle. I also I have ADHD. I was diagnosed ADHD at 31 years old, and you have to figure out how you work best. And weirdly enough, my most zen place is when I have thousands of dollars in front of me at the poker table and I'm able to concentrate. Me reading a book, not on my Adderall, is very painful. But me sitting for 16 hours at a poker tournament, that's something that doesn't even faze me. I enjoy every minute of it. And so there's little parts of that I've had to take into my business and say, okay, when do I work best? What time of the day do I work best? How do I handle certain things? What things should I outsource? Should I not outsource? And these are all skills I think I learned really from the poker table that I kind of transitioned into my business life today.
That's fascinating. And you kind of revealed some secrets there. I'm actually recording this podcast surrounded by a pool of $1 million bills. So we sort of the same motivations there.
Ding, 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 ding.
No, but one more thing there about, in terms of body language and reading people, what is the most common tell that you see at the poker table of when someone's bluffing? What's the biggest sign you see there?
Your feet give away the most, which is weird because you're at a table. You're like, wait a second, the feet aren't on the table, right? But your feet give away, your feet are the furthest from your brain and your heart, right? So they're the thing people will, they'll, okay, I don't want to breathe. I don't want to. So the thing about your feet also that is really interesting is when you move your feet, more often than not, your shoulders and neck move as well, right? So if you're shuffling your feet or you're tapping your feet, so that's usually the tell that I focus on the most is, I'll sometimes sit back from the table, or I'll see, okay, I'm like, oh, look at the back, look at the shoulder of their shirt. It's moving because they're tapping their feet. So the feet, weirdly enough, it's not what most people expect. But the other piece about that is you always have to get a baseline of somebody, right? So you spend about 30 minutes understanding what they normally do on a normal basis. And then what you're looking for is drastic changes. And those drastic changes usually happen on people's feet. Like it's funny, and you guys can test this out. When you get excited, maybe you're on a phone call, more often than not, you tuck your feet directly under the chair. Like that's your first instinct is like, ooh, you get excited.
Oh.
And when someone gets cards that they like, it's also the thing that they do. And they won't move their hands. They'll keep their sunglasses on. They'll be stoic, but yet they'll throw their feet under the table because it's the thing they're not thinking about. So it's one of those ones that when I tell people that, they're like, that sounds weird. And then you'll start to notice how often your feet are actually dictating your current emotions.
Shout out feet. And for the record, my feet are under my chair right now because this is very exciting. So you hit the nail on the head there.
Can you imagine getting a 100% open rate on your next marketing message? Well, you can with extra large postcards that are impossible to ignore. Hippo Direct can help you find the perfect list of proven direct mail responders. We can even help lay out and design the postcard for you. Check us out at hippodirect.com.
Let's embrace some change here, as you speak about so often, and let's move to a discussion on emerging technology trends and embracing technology, something that is a big passion area for you and something that so many people enjoy learning about, and learning about these new devices and platforms and technology out there, which seemingly changes all the time. First thing there, how did you get so into technology and sort of the ways that technology connects us in the first place?
So interestingly enough, I kind of grew up, I always wanted to be a sports center anchor. I always wanted to be, like that was my dream. I even went to school with like a media studies focus, but for some reason my guidance counselor didn't tell me that journalism was a big part of media studies. And my grammar is not great. English was probably one of the classes I struggled with the most. But I was always good on computers, and I always loved what computers allowed us to do. But I always looked at computers as a way to facilitate something that I was already doing, not replace what I was doing, right? And so, and this is probably the biggest piece for me, is that as I learned different technology, I always looked at the technology and said, okay, I want to learn every aspect of it. And then after I learn every aspect, I want to look at it and say, how does it impact my life? What can it allow me to do? And does it help me get closer to what my success is or what my goals are? And if it doesn't, I don't need the technology, right? And I think I have like a weird approach, because a lot of people that are in my space, a lot of my friends that are, I would say technology focused analysts, they always are kind of looking at technology and saying like, you got to be doing this, or you have to doing this, or, virtual reality is going to be changing everything. And I've always looked at it and saying, okay, we need to understand technology, but we need to relate it back to who we are. And cybersecurity helped me in this, because this is one of the biggest faults in security now. And I use this example oftentimes, is that when something happens in security, when there's a breach or somebody steals your credit card, we oftentimes overcorrect. And overcorrection, in my opinion, is a sign that you are scared of the unknown. It is not the right way to do that. And one of the greatest examples of this, when I worked at the Pentagon at the time, and we had a breach of passwords. And funny enough, and this is early 2000s, so I can share this, but the number one place, if you wanted to hack the US government, the number one place to look for a password or to study a password was underneath the keyboard of someone's desk. Because it was required. It was, that's where they would put their password. And the reason that is because at one point we got so complicated in security was that you needed to have a 30-character password. It could not have a word or a phrase in that 30 characters. It needed to have 4 uppercase, 6 lowercase. It needed to have a number, a variable. It had to have all of these things. And what happened was we overcorrected so much that nobody could remember their damn password. And so we just wrote it on a sticky note and we stuck it under our keyboard. And so the question became, was a 6-character password less secure than a 30-character password that we forced people to memorize, right? Like if you think about it that way.
Right, yeah.
And so I always look at computers and technology. This is one of the things that I look at really closely, is that we often overcorrect, or we go all in for no reason, right? Like, so if we see something coming, oh my goodness, we need to automate our email. All of a sudden we switch everything and we just start automating everything. And you're like, hold on a second. Nobody said automation fixes everything, and automation doesn't replace, we need to do things at scale. And so I fell in love with technology, and I fell in love with the ability of, for me, is that I listen and learn to what's going on, and then I translate that back in human terms and saying, hey, if your business wants to accomplish this, this is a great piece of technology. And that's been really my secret to success is I can work in the weeds. I'm on the Watson analytics team with IBM. So I get to, listen and learn about machine learning and data science. And I study a lot of I would say the really geeky technology things, but I also can translate that back to a business owner that doesn't understand the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality, and I can help them understand the change. So I think that's, for me, is the biggest thing, is that, technology today, it's not going anywhere, right? And the rate that we're innovating is something we've never seen before. But I look at it and saying, how can we embrace it? Not how can we don't have to go all in on everything. And I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make. And so that's really where I fit into this. And it's partially because of my cybersecurity role. It's partially because I worked for this enterprise company, and we were hiring new employees, 12 new employees a week, and trying to ramp people up. I started to realize that anyone can learn anything from YouTube. We just have to have the right mindset to be open to learning, and also be open to understanding that not everything needs to be implemented today. But my tagline is, we need to operate our businesses and focus on marketing where our customers are today, while listening and learning for where they're going tomorrow. And that's kind of how I shape the conversation around technology.
Absolutely. And you've absolutely done so. And I think your Geek Speak and your whole sort of personal brand that you've created is really, you're in a really fun and helpful niche there of being on top of all the new technology that's out there, and making it really simple to understand, and kind of doing the dirty work for your community and fan base there that I know is super loyal to you in terms of learning about new things and, hey, what should I do? What should I try out? So that stuff is really fun and insightful. On a more practical note, how do you discover new technology? What's the biggest way you see stuff and say, you know what, I'm going to dive into this?
Oh, that's interesting. That's a good one. I'm a huge podcast consumer. I get known for video a lot. I've done a lot of video work. I've helped launch, I did a video influencer campaign with the Super Bowl. I helped launch IBM and Dell's very first Facebook Live and Periscope. So live video is a big piece for me. But weirdly enough, podcast consumption is the number one place for me. I'm not a huge reader, but I consume a lot of podcasts. I'm also, Twitter is my favorite platform in the world. So I'm on Twitter a lot. Yes, for those that are listening that forgot that Twitter still exists.
Very much so.
Twitter is one of my favorite things. And then I also use a tool, an app on my iPad called Flipboard. Flipboard is a digital magazine. I'm not affiliated with them. It's a free tool, so I'm not promoting anything here. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to curate what news you get. So you can thumbs up or thumbs down different information, different blogs, different topics inside of this Flipboard. And so usually what I do, I'd say I haven't been doing it as much now. I'd probably say it's probably an hour a week. It used to be 30 minutes a day, where I would just open this app and I would just read different articles that were trending. And if it was an article that I really liked, I would thumbs up it. And then I would get more articles that are on that same topic. And so that's kind of the way that I do it. I stay super dialed in. One of the things that people are often surprised to hear is, I create a lot of content. I do 4 weekly videos. I do 2 weekly podcasts. I also am on every social channel as part of my business and brand. Is I like to be on all of the channels so that I can help my clients not have to be on all of the channels.
Right.
But interestingly enough, as much content as I create, as much as people assume that I'm everywhere on everything, I consume more content than I create. I watch Instagram stories every single day. I probably spend 15 minutes on Instagram stories just consuming what people are doing, how they're doing it, what's Gary Vaynerchuk doing, what's my favorite brands doing, what is Google doing differently. I consume a lot. And, I would say right now I'm about 11 or 12 podcasts a week I listen to. Now, I have a little bit of a luxury there because I travel every week on an airplane. So I do a lot of my consumption of my podcast there. But if I just say how I stay on technology, I'd say it's a combination of podcast consumption, Twitter, active listening, and then I use this app called Flipboard.
I totally agree with you. The consume more than you create. I love doing it. Obviously you have to manage your time wisely and can't spend all the time doing it, but there's so many effective mediums to do it. And now, especially with this podcast boom and, huge podcast fan myself, but especially when you're traveling, there's so many good ways to consume information and new, insightful, helpful things. And I like how you called out Gary V, because I know you guys, and I'm actually on the same page as you with this, have some differing opinions in that he doesn't consume other people's content, which is crazy in my mind. And I know you agree with that as well. What's your thoughts on that, and on how he's sort of this content god, but he doesn't consume other people's content, but I know it can be incredibly helpful. Can you speak about that for a little bit?
Sure. So when I think of, Gary Vaynerchuk, and I've been very blessed. He kind of took me under his wing in 2013 and gave me some really amazing advice and kind of encouraged me at a time where I wasn't sure if marketing was the space I wanted to be in. And so I owe a lot to him. But I think one of the things that Gary and I kind of connected with early on was that we often disagree on things just as much as we agree on things. And and using Gary as an example is kind of like using Apple and Amazon as an example for innovation, right? Like, when someone tells me like, well, Apple's doing it, I'm like, well, if you have 1 billion in surplus, you have a cult following, and you have people that buy your products without even caring about the price, you can follow Apple's lead, right? And so it kind of goes in the same thing as Gary Vaynerchuk. Is the way that Gary does things is freaking amazing. The guy works harder than I know of anyone else. I'm pretty good friends with some of the people on his team. I've been I've been on the road with him a couple of times, and I've never seen anybody work like him. I've never seen anybody have the drive like him.
Right.
But he also has a giant team with him. And so
Yep.
Gary has always said that he doesn't consume other people's content because he doesn't want it to pollute his own opinion. And he doesn't want to feel like he's ever copycatting anybody. So he never is worried about copying someone else's thoughts because he doesn't consume. And I can tell you, this is a struggle for me sometimes, this idea of imposter syndrome, where you're like, ooh, I could talk about this. And then you hear somebody that is in your network talking about that topic, and you're like, oh, they talked about it. I guess I'm not going to talk about it anymore, right? So Gary kind of eliminates that concept from his repertoire because he's able to do that. But Gary's also been in the game for forever. He's also one that I believe is okay being polarizing. He also has a work ethic because his goal is to own the New York Jets and the largest building in New York City, right?
Yep.
For me, my goal is to make enough money to where I have to work less so that I can have my daughters travel the world with me and I can go to more countries, right? So like I have different goals than Gary. Therefore, I have different work ethic than Gary, and I'm okay with that. And I think for me, this is where you have to start managing things and saying, if Gary's doing it this way, what does that mean? And I think this is one of the things that Gary gets sometimes some bad flack for, and I think it's not called for, is there's a lot of people that follow what Gary does and they only think about what he does. But if you look at Gary at a holistic view and you think about how he does things and why he does things, he is a genius. The dude is, but his cult of people they're like, oh, if I do a video every day where I scream at people and tell people what to do, I'm going to be as big as Gary Vaynerchuk, or I'm going to do exactly what Gary does. And I probably get this question once a month. And I get people that say, Brian, I'm doing exactly what Gary's doing, and I'm not making any headway. And I'm like, oh, that's funny because you become Gary's exhaust. Gary has done things and pushed limits that nobody would have imagined. I mean, the guy has a sports agency now, right? Like he's getting into the speaking business. I mean, and so I think one of the things I look at this and I say, for me, I want to be in the know, but I also want to care about other people. And I'm not at Gary's level. I will never qualify to say that I'm at the same level. But I can tell you, I do a lot of things where I study. I actually did it today. I was watching Gary's Instagram stories today. And I was like, I wonder what call to actions he's using in his Instagram stories. And so I watched them. I think it was probably like he had like 16 or 17 stories. So it was like a minute and a half worth of content. And I watched it once. And then I went back and watched it a second time. And I was like, okay, what I can see Gary's doing is Gary's driving people to short form video, but then he's driving them to his new conference that he has that launches in January. And the way he's doing that is he's giving people a whole bunch of value, and then he's reminding them that not everybody can attend this conference. So I'm studying why he's doing it, not what he's actually doing. And I think that's a big piece of it. And I think for everybody that's out there right now, I will say this, my secret to success in the last 5 years, I mean, this is the secret for success for me, is that I care about people before they realize that they want me to care about them, right? So I support them. I listen to their content. There's a couple events that I want to speak at in 2019. I've been engaging with them for a year on social media because I know that when I make the ask and say, you need to hire me to speak, they're going to say, hell yeah, why didn't I think of that? And it's because I'm consuming their content. And so like that's my strategy, where Gary's strategy is different, and he blasts his message and does things his way. And so I think that's a kind of an important thing to do, but I'm a big believer in studying those that are paving the way. And, Gary is one of them that is just a rock star when it comes to content creation, embracing trends, and not being afraid to fail. He's done more things to fail at different projects than anyone I know, but he just continues on.
Yeah. And speaking of trends, what is the one thing in this tech and digital space that you are most excited about over the next few years?
Ooh, what am I most excited about? So I think we're getting in this weird space where for the last 8 or 9 years, we've been using digital to distance ourselves from our consumer. We've been using it. We're like, okay, well, we don't want people to talk on the phone with us, so let's send them to our website. Then we were like, oh crap, the contact form is annoying because now they want responses. Why don't we make them sign up for an email newsletter that nobody wants because nobody wants more email? And we've kind of gotten this weird cycle of like forcing people into these habits because we wanted to get further away from people. And I think video, and it sounds, it's the easy thing to call, but I think video is the great disruptor. Because right now, video was a disruptor 5 years ago, but you needed a big budget, you needed an agency, you needed a recording studio, right? Now you need a telephone, right? Like if you have a smartphone, you can create great content like what Gary Vee creates or what Apple or Google is creating. I mean, I worked at the Super Bowl. I did 21 hours with the Super Bowl doing video work with them. I recorded all 21 hours on my iPhone for the Super Bowl, right? I launched IBM's very first Facebook Live from my iPhone. So if IBM and the Super Bowl are willing to do video from their phone, what the hell is our excuse? Like, what the heck is your brand's excuse? Nobody has an excuse. And so I look at this, and I think one of the trends I think I'm probably most excited about is the personalization using video, right? And so I'm talking about things like, for every one of my clients, when my clients want me to do a proposal, I don't do a paper proposal. I do a personalized video where I just turn on my camera. I have a whiteboard, or right now it's a yellow board, because I'm black and yellow, Steeler fan. I have my yellow board behind me, and I actually whiteboard my process, and I give them a personalized RFP. I give them a personalized process of what I'm doing, and I can tell you, people love that. I don't even know if they watch the full video. They just care that I just gave them something personalized. And I think personalization, it's been a buzzword in marketing for a while, but we haven't had the tools, the technology, and let's face it, we haven't had the focus to give a crap about our customers at that level until now. I think the consumers are more powerful than they've ever been before. They're more smarter. They're smarter than they've ever been. I almost said more smarter. Wow. That's a good one.
That would be pretty ironic.
Yeah, it's a very ironic Freudian slip there. But I think I think of that as one of the big things. The other thing about this that I think we're going to start to see is that I think we got to this weird spot where content for content's sake just became what we did. We heard that blogging was popular, so we blogged 7 days a week. Do we have something good to say 7 days a week? Hell no. Do we have something good to say once a week? I question that, right? But I think we're going to start to move to this new world where we're going to focus on just creating some great content and getting it out there. And we're going to use things like artificial intelligence. We're going to use things like machine learning. I'm excited for augmented reality. I think augmented reality is much more exciting than virtual reality. And for those that don't really understand the true differences, augmented reality is layering over data over our current world, where virtual reality is putting a headset and going to another world. And so I look at it and saying, like, imagine being able to walk down the street and on your sunglasses, you'll be able to see the average Yelp reviews of all of your friends at each one of the restaurants. And it's going to pop open. And then when you walk in, it's going to have, you're going to have, you're not going to have to wait. You ask the hostess what the wait time is. The hostess, it's going to actually pop up, on your phone, or it'll pop up on your glasses or on your device. And so I'm excited for that stuff, but more importantly than anything else, I'm excited for highly personalized content that is more about great content and less about content for content's sake. Bam.
There you have it. A lot of exciting stuff coming up, and you're kind of strutting your stuff right now. That was a beautiful definition of the difference between AR and VR. So thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, let's move to a quick segment on inspiration and creativity. So here, think people, hobbies, resources that inspire you. So besides from Gary, who we've already mentioned and obviously is a big influence, who comes to mind when you think about your biggest business influences?
Ooh, business influences. Well, this is a good one because I think it just really depends on, I like watching startups do innovative things. I also like watching brands that all of a sudden get a little bit of, let's say, get a little bit of word of mouth love and then see where they go. One of the brands that I love is, and I love their products as well as their marketing, is Away Luggage. Away Luggage, you're going to start seeing their commercials on TV right now, but this is a brand and a company that was founded by someone that she realized that there wasn't one piece of luggage that she thought was a high quality that had a lifetime warranty. And she started this business all via word of mouth, all via social media. And it's now like their Instagram is amazing. They use user-generated content. They engage on every single platform. They had to swap out one of the parts in my product in the carry-on luggage that I use. They sent me a link to a YouTube video that said, "Hello, Brian. We're sorry that you had to change this out. We didn't see this coming. Here's a video on how you can swap out this part of your luggage so that you can pass the TSA guidelines." I mean, like, this company is doing some really cool things. So it's called Away Luggage, AWAY. And another one on that same kind of front is interesting. I'm actually drinking that right now. It's called Hint Water, HINT. Follow them on social media. It's Kara Golding is the founder of them. She's the old executive at AOL. And she just is doing, like, their brand is fun. It's charismatic. They do a lot of things with different colors. Their idea is having flavored water to replace your soda consumption. And I'm not a flavored water person, but this flavored water has, quote unquote, a hint of flavor, and it's really good. And so those are two brands maybe that most people aren't. They wouldn't have expected me to say. And then if I looked at thought leaders, and this is someone I think we both are friends with, Andrew Davis.
Yeah, just had him on actually.
Yeah, he was on your pod. I saw that. He is my hero in speaking. He's my hero. He is a guy that is innovative. He is fun. He is charismatic. And the way he does things, he does a YouTube series right now. It's called the Loyalty Loop.
Yep.
And he is super smart. I mean, one of the smartest guys I've ever met. But he's also friendly and down to earth. We are both speakers. We kind of speak in the same speaking tour. We're both in a mastermind together. But Andrew Davis is just one of the best. So yeah, if you guys haven't listened to his podcast episode on here, you have to check him out. And I will tell you, he's someone that is genuinely one of the greatest humans that I've ever met. And so it's nice to see someone that is super smart, super innovative, really down to earth. So he would be the human that I look at right now as someone that I look up to, and I hope to achieve kind of half of his success as I kind of grow in this space.
Well, appreciate the shout out of the episode. And yeah, Drew Davis, he is awesome. Does he, by the way, on the tour, does he go by Andrew or Drew? Because he seemed kind of okay with whatever.
I think it kind of goes with both. It's kind of, I go by Fanzo and Fanzo.
Fanzo, yeah.
My parents call it's Fanzo is how it works, but I go by both, and I think he's the same way.
And he goes by Gonzo with the Muppets.
There you go.
No, he's super down to earth. He's awesome. And I like the companies you shouted out as well. I've been seeing more and more stuff about Away Luggage. And I know some of my friends have even started adopting them and are huge fans of their products. So it's kind of cool. It feels kind of like it was the calm before the storm, and now they're picking up. And as you mentioned, they're going to pick up even more. And then I'll check the little hint here. I'll have to check out Hint Water after. So how about hobbies? In addition to poker, what else do you like to do in your free time outside of business to help inspire you?
So I played hockey in college. I was playing hockey for a while after college. I took the last couple of years off. I got divorced. I moved. I've been doing kind of handling a whole bunch of the entrepreneur world on that side of the house. But I love to travel. My job, as a full-time speaker, I travel a ton. But I actually really enjoy it. Like, I enjoy the hotel life. I enjoy the airport conversation. I enjoy kind of that whole space. So I really find a lot when it comes to that side of the house. I also love studying industries that are way outside of my kind of purview. So CrossFit right now is an industry that I've been studying for about a year and a half. I'm not a CrossFitter myself. It might be my New Year's resolution to jump into CrossFit, but I've been studying it for a year and a half. It's one of those spaces that influencer marketing works like gangbusters. When someone that is in CrossFit gives a recommendation for a protein shake, they sell out of that protein shake, right? When people are, they do the before and after pictures. So I weirdly enough, I love this space. I really love social media. When I'm not doing my business life, I like to kind of study those kind of things. So that's definitely one of the things to do. And then the other one is my daughters are my world. So the best job I've ever had in my life was being a dad, and now a dad, a single dad, a divorced dad. It's great for me that, I get my daughters, every other weekend, and those every other weekends, I completely unplug from social, and we go bowling, we go to the roller rink. We went and saw the Grinch movie this past weekend.
How was it, by the way?
Oh, it was dude. It was great. Like I wasn't sure. Like the Grinch is kind of like I didn't want to like mess up. And they
right.
changed
This is
the
like
story.
remake number 2 or 3, right?
But this one they changed the story a little bit. But I like the changes they made. My daughters are 8, 7, and 4, and so it was perfect for all 3 of them. I think they all 3 were entertained and really enjoyed it. So, but no. So for me, I actually study what my daughters do. Right. I give my daughter an iPad and I watch how she interacts. I watch where she puts her fingers on the device. I'm an advisor for a couple different brands, couple different businesses, and one of those businesses is an app, and we're actually changing the controls within the app based on children's fingers and figuring out, well, if a kid holds a device this way, I'm guessing majority of us are going to learn from children. So that's kind of the hobbies and things that I do. I love consuming podcasts, studying other industries, and then really kind of living the life of my kids and doing that kind of world.
That's amazing. That's really cool. Really cool what you're doing. And podcasts, what is your favorite podcast right now? Besides this one.
Yeah, of course. Armchair Expert. It's hosted by Dax Shepard. If you guys remember Dax Shepard from Punk'd. He's also married to Kristen Bell, who is that amazing actress. It's called Armchair Expert. In my opinion, it is the greatest interviews that I've ever heard. It's better than Joe Rogan, in my opinion. It rivals Howard Stern. And when it comes to, he interviews a different celebrity, but he talks about vulnerable topics such as drug abuse or sexual abuse, or he talks about things like childhood struggles or impact of your parents and how you were raised. And so he interviews some amazing people, but he brings them down to earth, and the way that he asks questions, and he's someone that he's been 21 years sober, and he talks about his own struggles in that space a lot. Probably one of the coolest, most down to earth. The podcasts are long, but I actually, crazy enough, I look forward to them on Fridays. They come out every Friday. Like I do a new TV series, like as soon as it pops up on my phone, I start listening to the episode. So yeah, check out Armchair Expert. It's growing like crazy. I think right now it's the #1 podcast on Spotify. When I started listening to it, it was definitely just a Dax Shepard pilot project, but it's cool. He does these interviews, and at the end, his co-host and him, they do a fact check at the very end where they go over the different facts that were talked about in the show. But just the structure of it's great. It's fun, a little bit of entertaining, but I get motivated after every episode. So yeah, check out Armchair Expert.
There you have it. I got to check it out. A few of my friends have been talking about that one like crazy too. It's really blowing up. So that's really cool you mentioned that one. Let's go to a segment called the Wild Business Shout Out of the Week.
The Wild Business Shout Out of the Week.
This is where we cover a recent marketing campaign or advertising campaign that caught our attention. And I know pretty recently, Google Assistant had a pretty cool ad that involved a lot of nostalgia. Can you speak about that one a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, this one caught my eye. I called it the greatest ad of the holiday season, like hands down. It might be my favorite ad of the year. They took our good friend Macaulay Culkin and Home Alone, and they pretty much put Home Alone in today's world with Google Assistant. And they used clips from the old Home Alone, but they also replayed everything from him jumping on the bed to him brushing his teeth and using Google Assist to change like, hey, Google Assist, change the music or change the temperature. And they showed the old stove in the basement. And nostalgia is huge right now. It's definitely a massive trend. And one of I do a lot of studies on millennials and Gen Z, and one of the things that people don't realize is that younger generations, those under the age of 38 years old today, they really love tradition. They really, we've all grown up, and it's one of these weird things where we get told like, oh, this younger generation's stuck in their phone, and this younger generation, all they care about is Facebook and TV. But we also care about going to the movies and old movie reboots, and we like wearing T-shirts that like I have a Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood T-shirt that I wear all the time that gets all kinds of good people that comment. I have a Sandlot shirt that I wear and so like this nostalgia is like. It makes a lot of sense for marketing right now because of the space of trying to attract that younger generation. But you have to do it right, and you have to fit your project. And I think a lot of brands kind of throw it out there, and then you're like, that makes no sense at all. But damn, right. Google Assist got this one right. I mean, think about it. Like as soon as the ad started, I was like, oh my goodness. Like imagine if we went back to a whole bunch of the old movies and we just added voice assistant and like some of these technologies that we have. Like imagine if we added them to these old movies, like what would that movie be? Like I was a big 90210 fan, and I'm not afraid to admit it, right? 90210 was my favorite.
Don't be. Yeah, shout it from the rooftops.
Oh yes. But like imagine 90210 with iPhones, right? Or 90210, or even like imagine Saved by the Bell with kids being able to be on their phone in Saved by the Bell and being able to go to school. And I think Google Assist did a heck of a job. It's a nice short video. It's not too long. And the fact that Macaulay Culkin reshot all of the parts. I mean, they have him jumping on the bed in the exact same room
Right.
that Home Alone was shot on. And I also like that Macaulay Culkin tweeted it out. He also has been commenting back to all the people's tweets about it. He talked about the project itself. Like it truly felt like it was a collaboration of Google, probably the Home Alone team, as well as Macaulay Culkin. And I think that's the true way of making that work, is it needs to fit the mark across the board. And it's a great ad. If you guys haven't seen it yet, check out Google Assist Home Alone remake. It's pretty darn amazing.
It's an effective brandscape, to go back to Drew Davis's thing. It's a really, really, really fun and amazing and just full of nostalgia campaign. I think you had some great points there. One of the jokes kind of about Home Alone and technology over the past couple of decades is there's this ongoing joke that Home Alone could have never happened if cell phones were around at the time. That's kind of a funny thing, because they're like, oh, they would have just used a cell phone and called Kevin and that everything's fine and everything would have worked out. But Google somehow managed to have a commercial with Home Alone involving technology and be a little bit different than that joke. So kudos to them. Also, the fact that Macaulay Culkin has kind of been known for that role and not much since, and everybody's kind of like, what's he up to now? It's really, really cool on his part that he agreed to sort of come back into the mainstream with that. And to your point, jump on beds and do sort of all the fun stuff that he did in those movies. So really, really fun campaign. And they integrated their product so well throughout it. It was just, they really nailed it. That was a wild business shout out of the week. Going to wrap up real quick with some rapid fire Q&A here. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, let's get wild. What is your favorite food in Pittsburgh?
Ooh, favorite food in Pittsburgh. Well, I mean, everyone loves Permane Brothers because it's French fries on a sandwich.
So good.
I mean, it's so good. But for me, it's actually a hot turkey and gravy sandwich. I used to have that every Sunday before the football games when I would go to the football games with my dad. So yeah, open-faced hot turkey sandwich with gravy and mashed potatoes. That would be my go-to in Pittsburgh.
All right. And I know you've mentioned you're a big beer fan. What is your favorite brand of beer?
Ooh, yes, I'm a big craft beer. I'm a huge fan. Right, I like Sour Monkey by Victory Brewing.
Oh yeah.
Sours are kind of hip and trendy right now, and Victory has mass distribution, but that sour is one of the best out there. So Sour Monkey by Victory, and then I'll probably have to get a shout out. I like local beers too, and Virginia is doing a really good job of having some good local beers here. But yeah, Sour Monkey, Victory Brewing is my favorite.
Yeah, and shout out the locals as well. I love their Golden Monkey, their Belgian strong one. So good. So I guess that's obviously the sour version of it. All right, what's your biggest pet peeve?
Ooh, my biggest pet peeve is people that are different online than they are offline. It's a heck of a lot of work, like a crap load of, like if you want to be fake online, it takes so much damn work, like to fake things and like, but that really bothers me. And I think there's a lot of people today that still get away with it. But I think as we move forward, as we get more video, as we get more access and transparency to people, we're going to see that go away. But yeah, it's definitely a pet peeve for me. It's nothing like a turnoff that I meet somebody that I've known online and they're completely different. And it could be completely different in a way that is positive. But like for me, I'm like, man, why are you doing that? Like that is a pet peeve of mine. Like be the same person online as offline. And I've always said this, like if you suck offline, you're going to suck online. So your choice is to stop sucking, right? Like
right.
Stop sucking and then you'll be fine online.
Right. That's a great point. Last question. Favorite movie of all time?
Ooh, Heat. Heat is my favorite movie of all time. With De Niro and Pacino, definitely. It's a bank robbery movie. I was going to say The Fugitive is also one of my favorites of all time, but Heat is number one for me.
It's my favorite temperature in the winter as well. All right. Thank you so much, Brian Fanzo, iSocialFanz, for hopping on the Wild Business Growth Podcast. This was a ton of fun, and it was really cool diving into a lot of the topics that you love to speak about, and also some stuff that I think you haven't shared in too many interviews. So this was a lot of fun, and thanks for coming on. Before you go, I want to make sure that you mention the best place for people to connect with you. Where's the best place for people to link up with you?
Well, I'll give a little bit of advice to wrap this up. The show is online right now. It's hard to stand out. It's hard to get people to know who you are. The number one thing you can do is be consistent. And so for me, consistency is where you can find me. I am iSocialFanz, the letter I, and then social fans with a Z at the end. I'm that on every single social network. My website is iSocialFanz.com. My email is brian@iSocialFanz.com. So being consistent is a big thing for me. You could even search for my podcast, just searching iSocialFanz. I've made sure that I've SEO'd it there. But my podcast is called FOMO Fans, FOMOFANZ. So that's where I would send people to. But yeah, check me out. I always say, I create content on every platform. You don't have to follow me on every platform. Whichever platform is your favorite, give me a follow on that channel. I'm on Twitter every day. Instagram at the moment is my favorite platform when I wake up in the morning, and my favorite one when I go to bed at night. And of course, Facebook is Facebook. And I spend most of my time for business on LinkedIn. So any of those places, connect with me, iSocialFanz. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on. I'm in good company with all of the amazing guests you've had, and excited to hear from the listeners. And if there's anything I can do for anyone that's out there, don't hesitate to send me a message on any of the platforms.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And I mean, consistency is key. That's a great message in itself. But is there any one final thought that you want to wrap up with here? You can sign us off. The stage is yours, as it usually is.
So this is how I sign off a lot of my podcast. In today's world, if you want to truly make an impact with others, show you care. Show you care about others before they know that you need to care about them. You'd be amazed how easy it is just to say thank you to someone. If you have a favorite content creator or you have a favorite brand, send them a message and let them know that you care about them, that you appreciate the work they're doing. You'd be amazed how easy a thank you, a thumbs up, a attaboy will go. And not only will it make you feel good, it'll make them feel good. And I can tell you, some of my biggest business partnerships in my life today, the things that I'm doing around the world, happened because I just said thank you, or I told someone that I appreciated them, and that turned into a conversation, that turned into a relationship. So my advice is go above and beyond to show you care. Let people know that you appreciate them. It'll change your life. It'll change their life. And I can promise it'll change your business.
And to that, I have to say thank you, Brian, and I appreciate you very much.
Thanks again, Brian Fanzo, iSocialFanz, for coming on the Wild Business Growth Podcast, sharing your incredible story and wisdom with us. Thank you, listeners out there, Wild Business Growth Nation. I can't express enough how much we appreciate you. Whether this is your first episode, whether this is your 23rd episode or more, we really, really appreciate you taking the time and hearing these stories of these wonderful entrepreneurs and creative innovators. If you've been enjoying these episodes and wondering, how can I help out? There's a few different ways. Number one is to subscribe to this podcast if you're not already, and make sure to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or whatever your favorite platform is. Number two, connect with us on social media with the handle HippoDirect. We are on all your favorite social platforms, so pick the one that is best for you. And number three, sign up for the Hippo Digest if you don't mind getting one more email a week. It's your weekly recap of creative marketing, and we pick the most fun, exciting, and entertaining campaigns from across the web every single week and send it straight to your inbox. All you have to do is sign up at hippodirect.com/newsletter. That's all for this episode. We'll catch you in the new year. Until next time, let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!